Hello and a big welcome to all of you out there. And I'm very excited. Today I have a young girl with me. She's only 22, but have done a lot in her life with horses. So a big welcome to you, Tayla Hutchison. Um, and you are from New Zealand. It's a long way from us.
It is a long way. Thank you so much for having me. Um, yeah, it's awesome to be on the podcast.
Yeah, and you told me that you are running a little, not a little, but a riding school with your mother, and you do it in a different way. So let's hear about that.
Yeah, so we run a riding school that's for New Zealand, kind of medium sized. We have about 50 to 60 regular riders. And for us, one of the biggest things was introducing riders to the fact that how horses behave and how horses think, because I think it's something that's greatly overlooked in education, especially with young horse riders. So we, in our regular weekly lessons, and we run pony groups, which is riding and theory in one. The kids are consistently learning the theory with their riding, and we have certificates for the children so that they can follow where they're at. So the kids will also learn positive reinforcement and pressure release, so more traditional methods. And we like doing a mix for not only is it the way I personally train, but it's also the way that it gives the kids a way to choose so they don't have to stick to one little box. So we really push the fact that they don't have to firmly fit into like a certain training box and stuff like that. Our biggest focus is our horses. We have 22 on site because we offer adjustment as well. And I have my own, but about 9 of them in the school. And our school is, we do like camps and lessons and all of that. I started it with my mom. She started when I was about 14, and I came on board very slowly. I was coaching at 16 as a working student when I was 17, for some big people over here. And that's where I got introduced to working with the New Zealand wild horses and stuff. And then I stepped into the riding school when I was probably about 19. So we've only been full time for about 3 or 4 years now. But yeah, it just kept growing, and we have regular kids, and we have your normal like weekly kids as well as some of my kids I'm seeing like 5 to 6 days a week. They're here all the time. And for us, it's about growing the future of equestrians and providing them with the education that they need to make good decisions, basically.
I love the thought of certifications. I think that's a good idea to get the children to know where they are. That's a good idea.
Yeah, it does a great job. The kids can track their progress, they can look at what they're
Yes.
missing, and it also means they can go home and do research if they need to. We try to make sure that we're consistently available. My older kids, so my like 13, 14 year olds will message me and go, hey, I was confused about this. Can you re-explain it? And then I can send them an explanation. We're very lucky to have really, really good students, but we have not only a certificates that they can achieve so that they then receive a physical certificate for completing it. We also on the wall of our barn have um lists of like achievements that they need before taking the next step. So what they need before they canter and before they jump and stuff, because not
Okay.
only is it for the kids, but it's also for the parents, because half the time it's not the kids that want to be jumping high. It's the parents thinking that that's where the child needs to be. So it
Mm.
does give us a really good way to keep track and also point the kids and the parents towards that when they ask like where their kid's at or why their kid isn't moving as quickly, because we don't move our kids as quickly for the sheer factor that it's really important to us that the riders are riding for the horses, and that means not rushing. So every step's done with balance and kindness and understanding what they're actually doing, not just doing it because they're told to.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love the idea with the groundwork because it is missing in many riding schools. Yes.
Yeah, it's definitely it's missing over here too, which we see because we run camps,
Yeah.
and you see it at shows and you see it all over the place. And we're really lucky. There's some amazing places over here that do really good groundwork, but for us, it's just I've seen so many issues with horses that are caused by very, very simple boundaries and very simple training things. And so many of my riders don't just want to ride. They want to teach their pony tricks and they want to go for adventures with them. And all of that is basic groundwork and learning how to basically how to communicate with your horse.
Mm.
That's the main important part.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You were talking a little about you had a wild horse too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in New Zealand we have Kamanawa musters. So our wild horses are called the Kamanawas, and they are fully wild, and we do a muster. We were doing it every 2 years, and then it switched to every year for a little bit, and that's to protect our native plants and things like that, and obviously to care for the horses, because if there's too many out there, obviously it's much harder for them to find food and
Yeah.
have room. So they live out by army bases, and so they do sometimes see people, but they're still firmly wild. And last year I got one from the muster. I have never done a wild horse by myself before. In complete honesty, training horses, I've only broken in like a handful of them fully. It hasn't been my focus. And I got one from the muster, and you fill in an application of what you would like, but it just comes down to what's available. And so I wanted a 3-year-old ish colt, for the sheer fact that I didn't want a mare because most of them come in pregnant and I didn't need a foal.
Oh.
Um, and I really, really enjoy working with the colts and stuff, but I got I think he's probably only one when I got him. Um, so he was much younger than I had wanted, but he we don't have the yards for a wild horse, because obviously these guys are very good at jumping out and trying to climb out. So their fences have to be very high. And so he was down the road from me. So I was visiting at least twice a day. But the muster happens in winter. So for me, it was very difficult because I would go down there in the morning before I feed our horses, and then I go at night after coaching and feeding our horses, and it was dark at nighttime, and you can't obviously work with them in the dark. And I'd feed, and in the morning I'd feed, and I don't believe in asking them anything when it's feed time, because for them that's a safety. Like, they need to be able to eat, they need to be left alone while they do it. So finding time to work with him while he wasn't eating in between coaching and stuff was surprisingly difficult. He is now, we've had him just over a year. He is in a paddock. He's at home. He's wonderful. I did have experience working with the wild horses when I was a working student. I worked for the Wilson sisters, who had a whole batch of wild horses from the muster the year I went. So I had experience working with them and stuff, but it definitely wasn't as hands-on as having your own. Um, but my one's called Miko. He's about 2 now. And I very quickly realized that I wasn't going to be able to work with him as I'd planned, because he was much more skittish and jumpy than I'd anticipated. And obviously, he's a wild horse. Like, I knew he was going to be skittish and jumpy, but he was like on another level. And even after months and months of seeing us every day, he still thought we were like absolutely terrifying. And I switched his entire training to positive reinforcement based because pressure release wasn't working. And I'd worked with plenty of like semi-wild horses pressure release wise, and they responded super, super well. He did not. Um, but now, positive reinforcement based, he canters up to me in the paddock. I'm now at a point where I'm catching him and I'm leading him, so that we can get sorted for him to be gelded, because that has not happened yet. And he's very slowly realizing that he is a colt and that he's paddocked by girls. So we kind of want to get that sorted before that kind of fully clicks in. For me, he was a really big piece in my learning with positive reinforcement training, because generally with my own horses, I am mainly pressure release, and that's just what works with my horses. But I've had 2 horses in my journey that made me realize how important having that as a tool was, and that was Miko, my wild one. And then I had another horse who's also a Kamanawa, came out of the muster like 2 years before she came to me, and I'd never met a depressed horse before I met her. There was just no light in her eyes. She'd given up on life. It was devastating. I and brought her home, and I realized I could not work with her normally because she freaked out if you told her she was doing something wrong. She was obviously an ex-wild horse, and the people who'd worked with her had done a good job. But she could not handle any sort of corrections, and she also just she didn't want to try. She had no try in her at all. And I started playing around with positive reinforcement, and it like flipped a switch. She's like a completely different horse. She's still not a horse that I think will ever enjoy riding, unfortunately. But I mean, she self lines up to the mounting block. I can ride her around with, I just hop on her with no gear and ride her around. I don't have full steering, but it doesn't really matter for the sheer fact that she doesn't care. She'll just go where she's happy and chill and eat. And so she knows to target, and she'll come up in the paddock, and we go for free walks across the farm with nothing on, and she just follows. So yeah, anyway, like those guys changed a lot about how I train horses, both of them being ex-wild Kamanawas. And the Kamanawas are like a wicked breed. We have a few of them in the riding school, or crosses of them. They are known to be really chill horses when it comes down to it. And yeah, so there's usually a muster every year. Now there wasn't one this year, for a couple of reasons. We had massive flooding in one of our areas, and it was like it like took the whole country down, basically trying to help them rebuild and stuff. And it was a huge equine area, so we had a lot of horses looking for homes and a lot of businesses out, and it was pretty decent. And horses died. I mean, there was a whole riding school up there that every single one of their horses died from the flooding and stuff.
Ooh.
It was, and that's not normal for New Zealand. Like that, it was pretty extreme. Um, and so that changed a lot for us in New Zealand. It's changed everything. Like, it was a huge area for hay as well. So like New Zealand's having like almost a national like hay shortage and stuff. So that's always extra fun with as many horses as we have. We don't have a ton of land, so our horses are all get hay twice a day. And yeah, so that's not ideal, but
Yeah, yeah. And the fact is that you're always learning most of the difficult horses. So I love the thing that you had a wild horse and you get experience from that is totally different from the other horses. I think that's
Yeah, it
fantastic.
was a so different learning with them. And I sometimes like go up and work with him while one of my kids watches so I can explain what I'm doing and stuff, because they struggle enough to understand the difference between a school horse and a sport horse. So the difference between handling one of the school ponies that could not care less what you're doing compared to, I have young thoroughbreds as my sport horses,
Mm.
and it's hard enough for them to comprehend how different they are compared to working with a wild horse that can, Miko is a little more flicks between fight or flight. So he's not super aggressive, but you can tell very quickly when he flicks his ears back and kind of like threatens you. He definitely doesn't do it as often now, but it's like a whole different ball game for the kids to see, which I think is important, because I think when you grow up around riding school horses, you think every single horse is like doesn't spook and doesn't have any like issues and doesn't care whether you like run around them and stuff, although we teach the kids not to. But you know, when the school horses are so good, it's very easy for them to forget that not all horses are like that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, how is it with the students? Do you have a lot of coming in, or how is it in New Zealand? Is there a lot of people that want to ride, or you have to pick one here and one there? How is it with that?
um it's backwards and forwards. We have like times, it's winter at the moment, so it's definitely not as popular of a sport, especially because we are one of the handful in our area without an indoor arena. We keep our lessons stuff on rain or shine though, and if it's raining, they do a theory lesson. So whether that's learning, you know, horse first aid or how to gear up in the barn or whatever, they'll be learning something else. And we get we have a pretty consistent um like influx of students slowly coming in. We offer a couple of different things like toddler programs and stuff, so that um builds different students. And then obviously we have the ones that we've had for years. Quite a few of our teenagers we've had for a decent number of years, and they do volunteer hours in exchange for lessons and learning and stuff, and it's so good for their learning.
Yeah.
um but it's not, so there's about six-ish riding schools in the area, and I don't think we struggle to find people. Like they do, a lot of people do want to ride. Not everyone stays in it, but the equestrian community is pretty big, especially where we are. We're at the capital, so like it is a decent size of popularity down here. We definitely can't complain. It just depends on, we are not the most easily accessible place out of them all. A lot more central, but we offer something different. We are the only place at the moment that offers a mix of positive reinforcement and a mix of, we really push that the kids learn how to see pain in the horses and notice stress indicators and how to limit stress. And our biggest thing is, no matter how you train, we shouldn't be creating stress. Sometimes we can't help if a horse gets stressed, but we can at least do our best to not be the creators of that. And I think we're one of the only places that kind of push that philosophy and have a really strong belief system there. And we try, so our horses are a mix between um ridden with bits or ridden in a halter, so that the beginners can't like hurt their mouths or whatever. um it's just little things we do to try to give the horses the best life we can as riding school horses, because we all know it can be a little bit of a hard life because it can be a confusing one with lots of beginners. But our horses go out on the farm and go for hacks, and the kids learn to ride up and down hills, and as well as in the arena, because I think that's life skills. And in New Zealand, a lot of places don't have arenas and stuff. It's very normal just to learn how to ride in a paddock. So we try to do a mix so the kids are set up to ride in either.
That's fantastic. Yeah, as you said, a lot of riding schools, it's only in the paddock and nothing else, and that's it. That sounds great. You told me that you also have camps in the summer. Is that something special?
Yeah. Yeah, we're one of the only places that holds camps where you can, like in our area, that you can like we have horses that people can use. And I adore them. They're one of my favorite things to do. Camps are usually, we run camps every holidays. So in New Zealand, we have 4 sets of holidays. So we run at least one camp every holidays, which is a 3-day camp. And in the summer, we run two, and one of them is now usually a 5-day camp. And we have different themes for each camp. So last holidays, we did a filming camp. So all the kids made horse trailers. So they had to work together, they had to plan, they had to write out a plot for their horse trailer and film it, which is super fun, really funny to watch afterwards, but also really great for their teamwork and their planning and stuff. Our summer camps are usually show camps, so the kids do lessons on dressage and jumping, and then do like a mini show on the last day where they earn ribbons and stuff. And they're all very different. This winter, which is in a couple of weeks, our winter camp is informational based. So we have 3 different people coming in to give information, and to have a talk about what they do. So we have a body worker, advanced dressage rider, and a vet behaviorist to come in and talk with the riders and stuff. We have been running our camps for quite a number of years, and they change each time just to keep them interesting. But they are, like, in the summer, we have a swimming hole so they can take the ponies down and take them swimming. And
Wow.
we sometimes go for hacks and stuff. And they do a lot of things that they wouldn't usually do for the sheer factor that they help feed the horses morning and night. And they are around the horses consistently, and we'll hop on bareback and go to the swimming hole, and they'll be able to spend more time. For most of these guys, they don't have their own horses, and not all of them can come down all the time. So it's a time where they can be around them, and it's almost like just a little sneak peek into a full-time life with them, basically. And gives them the ability to, like, they wake up and then they can go see the horses, which is very different for most of them. They are pretty popular, especially with like our regular students. And we've had quite a few students come to our camp and then move to our riding school, which is always nice. And it's always interesting to, we get some really, really cool kids that come every time but go other places. But being the only place that runs camps, we're the only place they can kind of go, if that makes sense. But they are super, super fun, and it's a great way to for all the kids to see each other if they're in different groups and don't ride on the same days, and make friends and stuff. And the kids usually have little vlogs that they film throughout the camp and stuff, and then they put them together. And I'm also a photographer, so I tend to photograph most of the camps if I'm not coaching. And then the kids all get photos and stuff as well, which is always handy because most of the young teenagers are all over social media, so that's their thing.
That's right. Do they live by you then? Do you have food and room for them, or how is it
Yeah, so
working?
they stay the night, um mainly in tents, for the sheer factor that, and that tends to work really well. At the moment, they're staying in like a empty bus, which has heating as well, but which is mine and my partner's, but we're in the middle of selling that, so it'll probably go back to tents in the winter. We either go stay at a camp down the road or we sleep inside, just really depends. But the tents give the kids a little bit of freedom, and then they can talk and they don't have to worry about waking everyone up and things like that. And they're in group tents and they can kind of choose. We do give them the ability to choose. We do morning, lunch and dinner. And the big thing is we cater to all dietary requirements and stuff. So we just adjust as necessary. We usually get a couple of vegans and dairy free and stuff like that. So we do make everything able to suit them. Because it's very hard if they have to bring their own food to like a 3-day camp. So we do lunch and tea on the first day, all three on the middle day, and then breakfast and lunch on the third day, and they go home in the evening. And consistently available snacks and stuff, because it's really important when these kids are not used to being outside all day and stuff, that they consistently have the ability to eat more and stuff. By the end day, almost every single kid is absolutely shattered and very, very tired.
That's a
So we
good
try to give them
thing for
lots of
the
breaks.
parents to get them home then.
I think at least half of the kids, we get messages from the parents afterwards going, they fell asleep before we left the driveway. Like, it does really tire them out. But it's a
Yeah.
great show of like most of these kids aren't used to outside life for like consistently like that. But they do very, very well. And we have a couple of older girls now who attend camps but can take on a little bit of like a um role where they don't need to be told what to do as much when it comes to the feeding and stuff. And it gives not only gives them independence, but it also means the other kids can look up to them. And we have what we call our mentor program, where we have 4 riders on that, and they're the kids that have shown the best sort of attitude. They never complain. They are consistent, they are trustworthy, they're always looking to help, they volunteer the most, and so they're on our mentor group. And basically all that means is they get free lessons and we try to give them extra things. I think last holidays we took them over to a big sport horse stud over here so that they could go visit and see. I mean, the sport horse stud had horses that the kids couldn't dream of. Like they had stallions from overseas, and they had the majority of their show jumping horses sell for over like $40,000 and stuff. And so for the kids, it was just seeing that side. So being able to reward them like that is really handy. Um, and they greatly appreciate it. But without those guys helping us, it would be very hard to do what we do, because me and my mom run the base of it, and we have one other coach with us. And so without having those extra hands of those young teenagers, we really couldn't do as much
Mm.
as we can now, especially with winter and it getting so dark and stuff.
And it must be great for these teenagers too, because a lot of teenagers today, they are lost in the internet, as you say. Just to have the possibility to come out there and to be together with the horses and everything. So it's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, they do
So,
really, really well.
yeah. So if somebody wants to get in touch with you, where can they find you? Are you
Um,
also in the media or
yeah,
or is
we
it?
are.
Yeah.
So we're Little River Equestrian. So it's a Little River, one word, and then equestrian, and we have Facebook, Instagram, websites, all the socials. Um, we're pretty active on there, and that's mainly I mean, I'm a photographer, so we do have a lot of photos to post, which is always handy. And I have quite a few social medias, so it is really easy to um keep that up to date and stuff. And yeah, so website and stuff, really easy to get in contact or
What
like just see what we do and stuff.
what is the name of the website?
It's just Little River Equestrian, all one word.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. I want to have a look at your photos. That I think that would be a nice thing to have a look at. As I said, I have never been to New Zealand. I love to hear about it. So
Yeah, it is really, really pretty. It's much prettier in the South Island rather than up here. We're in the North Island. But it is really nice. And I mean, we're really lucky. We're in a valley, we're surrounded by hills. We have a river that runs through our property and then creeks in the majority of the paddocks, which is pretty, but also means you don't have to have water troughs in the paddocks, which is always handy, and they get fresh water. Um, and yeah, I mean, we definitely can't complain. It's we live in Wellington, so it is very windy. Is the probably the only complaint I could ever make. As in our normal it is not unusual to get 120k gusts through and stuff. But the horses get very used to it. I personally just avoid riding when it's really windy because my young thoroughbreds think that the wind's very scary. So
yeah, but I can think that if it is very windy, you will not have a lot of flies then.
not so yeah, definitely not a ton. Um it's not too bad. We get a lot of sandflies and stuff depending on the weather. The weather here is very unpredictable.
Okay.
You can usually get all 4 seasons in one day.
Oh
So
wow.
it can yeah, it can make it a little hard. Um and temperature can be a little bit up and down, but it's definitely not awful. And we don't get snow or anything. So it's definitely not too bad.
Well, it's been a pleasure to meet you, and I'm so excited to hear about all your things. So, thanks a lot to be
Thank you
here,
so much for having me.
and I hope you out there will get to see New Zealand to visit, and I hope you like the podcast today, and please subscribe. So we are getting on with more persons every week. So thanks a lot for today and have a great day. And thank you for coming.